A millionaire had an affair, fired his pregnant mistress. What he sees 15 years later shocks him. This story was inspired by one of our subscribers' stories. I hope you enjoy it. Leonardo Martins was a man who, in the eyes of the world, had it all. At 43, he was CEO of the innovative technology multinational Mindwave, based in Lisbon. His name was associated with excellence, prestige, and power. Married to Sofia, a charismatic influencer and devoted mother to his 3 daughters, he lived in a large contemporary-style house in the upmarket Restello neighborhood, overlooking the Tagus River. At first glance, Leo was the personification of success, wealthy, well-married, and the father of an exemplary family. However, behind the glossy veneer of his public life, there were cracks that only he could feel. At night, as he watched the flickering light of the bridges over the Tagus, an emptiness consumed him. He tried to fill it with work, travel, investments, and even extravagant gifts for Sofia and the girls. But nothing worked. It was in the midst of this restlessness that Amanda Ribeiro came into his life. Before I continue this exciting story, I'd like to ask you for something very special. Subscribe to my channel and help me reach my dream of 3,000 subscribers. Now let's continue. Amanda was 26 years old and worked as a development analyst at Mindwave. The daughter of Angolan immigrants, she was a woman of striking presence, known for her sharp mind and determination. Despite facing barriers that came with structural racism and sexism in the corporate environment, Amanda never let them underestimate her. One evening, after a corporate event that had brought together the company's top executives and young talent, Amanda and Leo ended up staying behind while other colleagues left. He had noticed Amanda before, but had never had a direct conversation with her until that moment. "Do you always work this late?" asked Leo as he watched her reviewing documents at the back of the conference room. Amanda looked up, surprised by the approach. "It's the price for someone who wants to make a difference." Leo smiled, but there was something else in his gaze. He was used to being admired, but there was something disarming about her firmness. Amanda, on the other hand, had no illusions about who he was. A charismatic man used to getting what he wanted. What began as a casual conversation turned into something deeper. Leo began to find reasons to cross paths with Amanda in meetings or projects that didn't directly require his presence. Over time, the two established a connection that went beyond the professional environment. Amanda challenged him intellectually, something that Sofia, dedicated to domestic life and exposure on social media, no longer did. One evening, after a long meeting that ended late, Leo offered Amanda a lift home. The drive to her house in the Benfica neighborhood was filled with silence and furtive glances. When they arrived, a momentary impulse led Leo to kiss her. Amanda hesitated, but gave in to the desire she also felt. The affair began that night. For weeks, Leo and Amanda would meet on the sly, away from the eyes of the company or his family. For Amanda, it was an experience fraught with intensity and danger. Although she knew Leo was married, she deluded herself into thinking that perhaps there was something deeper between them. Leo, on the other hand, was torn. Part of him knew it was a colossal mistake, but another part, the part that dominated his impulses, justified the affair as an escape from the boredom and weight of his perfect life. Things came to a head when Amanda found out she was pregnant. It took her days to process the news, oscillating between fear and hope. A voice inside her told her that Leo could accept the news as an opportunity for change. After all, he was intelligent, successful, and, despite everything, she believed he had a good heart. The following Friday, Amanda went to Leo's office. He seemed relaxed, reviewing financial reports while the golden light of dusk illuminated the large, minimalist room. As soon as she entered, he realized something was wrong. "Amanda, what's wrong?" he asked, closing his laptop. She came closer and put her hands on the table, trying to hide her trembling. "I'm pregnant, Leo." The room fell absolutely silent. Leo remained motionless, as if the words hadn't reached him. When he finally answered, his voice was low and cutting. This can't be happening." Amanda took a step back, shocked. "What do you mean, it can't? It's our son." Leo stood up, running his hand through his hair, his face rigid. "Amanda, you don't understand. I have a family, Sofia, the girls, at my public image. That can't come out." "Do you think I care about your image?" Amanda retorted, her voice now firmer. I'm talking about our son, Leo. He stared at her, his eyes hardened by an expression Amanda had never seen before. Absolute coldness. Amanda, I can't be the father of this child. It would destroy everything I've built. And what about me? Amanda felt her throat tighten. Do you think I'm going to solve this so that you can get on with your perfect life? Leo hesitated for a moment before saying something she would never forget. I can give you as much as you need to take care of it. You don't have to carry that burden. The pain Amanda felt was devastating. She remained silent, trying to absorb what he had just said. Then, in a trembling voice, she replied, I'm not getting rid of my son, and I don't need your money. She turned and left the office, feeling the tears roll down her cheeks as she walked down the corridor. She didn't look back. Leo stood still, staring at the door that had just closed. In his mind, he was already strategizing how to prevent the situation from coming to light. But something inside him knew that he had just made an irreparable mistake. Amanda, for her part, decided to quit her job and make a fresh start, far from Lisbon and the shadow of Leonardo Martins. Despite her broken heart, she promised herself that she would give her son the life he deserved, even if it meant facing the world alone. Amanda Ribeiro left Lisbon without looking back. The city that had been the stage for her ambitions now seemed suffocating, full of memories of a relationship that, for her, had begun as a promise and ended as a cruel betrayal. She decided to start again in Porto, where her cousin Camilla lived, and where she hoped to find some peace to face the challenges ahead. Porto was completely different from Lisbon. The cobbled streets, tiled facades, and quieter pace offered Amanda a welcome refuge, but at the same time, they also made her feel the weight of isolation. There she was no longer a respected professional working in a top company. She was just a pregnant woman starting from scratch, with no support and an uncertain future. The first few months in Porto were difficult. Amanda stayed in Camilla's small apartment, who welcomed her with open arms. Camilla, who worked as a hairdresser, didn't have much, but she offered what she could. A sofa bed in the living room, practical advice and infinite patience to listen to Amanda's outbursts. I never imagined he could be so cold, Amanda vented one evening while sipping a cup of tea in the tiny kitchen. Men like that only think of themselves, cousin, Camilla replied, fiddling with the curly hair she had just washed. But you're strong, and this baby will give you a reason to go on. Amanda looked down at her still flat belly and felt a twinge of fear mixed with newfound determination. Camilla was right. She didn't need Leonardo. She didn't need his money, his validation, or anything else. What mattered was the baby, and Amanda would do anything to be the mother he deserved. As the months passed, Amanda began to build a new routine. She got a temporary job as an administrative assistant in a small wine export company. The salary was modest, but enough to help Camilla with her expenses and save for the future. At work, Amanda showed the same dedication and competence that had made her admired in Lisbon. But this time, she avoided getting too close to her colleagues or sharing her story. She created a protective barrier around herself, a defense against judgments or invasive questions. The stares she received, especially when her pregnancy started to become evident, were hard to ignore. Although Porto was a welcoming city, Amanda felt the weight of racism and machismo even more clearly now that she was pregnant and single. One day during a work meeting, one of the older managers made a comment that left her speechless. "You're a beautiful woman, Amanda. It's a shame you let yourself get in the way so early." She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Internally, she felt the humiliation burning. But instead of reacting, she concentrated on proving her worth through her work. After all, she knew that prejudice from people like that manager was something she would face all her life. Time passed quickly, and on a cold November morning, Amanda gave birth to Gabriel. The birth was difficult, but as soon as she heard the baby cry, it all seemed worth it. Gabriel was perfect. With his golden skin, deep brown eyes, and a smile that lit up any room, he became Amanda's reason for living. Camilla was the first to hold Gabriel after his mother. As she cradled him, she looked at Amanda and said, "He's beautiful. He'll be as strong as you." Amanda smiled, but tears began to flow before she could control them. They were tears of relief, of happiness, and also of fear. Raising Gabriel alone would be the biggest challenge of her life, but she had no choice. Over the next few months, Amanda hardly slept. Between feedings, diapers, and Gabriel's cries, she still had to work and deal with the daily demands of a job that was unforgiving of mistakes. Even so, she never complained. Gabriel's every smile was a reminder that all the effort was worth it. When Gabriel turned a year old, Amanda realized that she needed more stability to guarantee his future. She loved her job at the export company, but knew that it wouldn't offer long-term growth. She decided to go back to school, enrolling in a specialization course in business management at the University of Porto. During the day, Amanda worked. At night, she attended classes, while Camilla stayed with Gabriel. It was an exhausting period, but also transformative. Amanda rediscovered her passion for learning and began to feel that she was taking back control of her life. With her diploma in hand, she got a job as operations manager at a growing startup. Little by little, Amanda's financial life began to improve. She rented a small apartment for herself and Gabriel, decorating it with simple but cozy furniture. Gabriel, now 4, was a curious and energetic child. He loved walking with Amanda along the Ribeira, watching the boats on the Douro River, and ordering ice cream even on the coldest days. For Amanda, these moments were precious. They were a constant reminder that, despite everything she had faced, she had created a safe and loving world for her son. Despite her achievements, Amanda couldn't stop the past from resurfacing from time to time. Whenever Gabriel asked about his father, she diverted the conversation. She didn't want to fill her son's head with painful stories, but she also knew that one day she would have to tell him the truth. "Mom, why don't I have a father like my friends?" he asked one evening, while playing with his dolls on the living room carpet. Amanda hesitated before answering. She sat down next to him and ran her fingers through the boy's curls. "You have me, my love. I'm enough for you and you're enough for me." Gabriel smiled, satisfied with the answer, but Amanda knew that this question would come back in the future, stronger and harder to answer. Amanda had sworn never to think about Leonardo Martins again, but he continued to haunt her in small details. Sometimes, when she saw Gabriel smile or make a particularly determined expression, she saw Leo. It was as if a part of him lived on in her son, an inescapable reminder of what she had lost and what he had rejected. Even so, Amanda never tried to look for him. For her, Leo had made his decision years ago, and she was determined to move on without him. Gabriel was the center of her life, and nothing would change that. But fate had other plans. Porto had become Amanda and Gabriel's home. The life she had built for the two of them was full of simple moments, but full of meaning. Walks by the Douro, playing in the parks, and evenings spent snuggled up on the sofa watching movies. Amanda had promised herself that she would never let Gabriel miss anything, least of all a father. She filled her son's world with love and security and believed that was enough. But fate has curious ways of turning our certainties upside down. It was a rainy autumn afternoon when Amanda and Gabriel walked into a busy coffee shop in the center of Porto. Amanda needed a strong coffee to face the rest of the day, while Gabriel, now 15, took the opportunity to devour a generous slice of chocolate cake. While Amanda waited in line to order, Gabriel chose a table near the window. With his headphones on, he was distracted, watching the raindrops drip down the glass. Amanda admired him from afar, with that motherly look that mixes pride and tenderness. He had grown so much, tall, strong, determined. Sometimes she saw traces of Leonardo in him, especially in his eyes and confident posture. She turned her thoughts away, as she did whenever the memory of Leo tried to invade her mind. The past was a scar, not an open wound. At least, that was what she had believed until that moment. As soon as Amanda picked up her coffee and turned to go back to the table, she froze. On the other side of the cafe, she saw Leonardo Martins. He looked exactly as she remembered, although time had left its mark on his face. His hair, now slightly graying at the temples, made him look even more imposing. He wore an elegant suit, but his expression looked tired, as if he were carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Amanda felt her heart race. The air seemed to leave her lungs, and for a moment she wondered if it was real or some kind of cruel delusion. She tried to pull herself together, but before she could discreetly leave, Leo saw her. His eyes locked onto her, wide with shock. He seemed about to say something, but Amanda reacted first. "Gabriel, let's go." Her voice trembled, but she kept her tone firm as she pulled on his coat. Gabriel, confused, removed his headphones. "What is it, Mum?" Before she could answer, Leonardo stood up as if something bigger than himself had prompted him to act. "Amanda!" he called out, his voice lower, almost hesitant. The sound of her name coming out of his mouth was like a punch. Amanda turned slowly, staring at the man she hadn't seen for 15 years. For a moment, everything around her disappeared. The cafeteria, the din of conversation, the sound of the rain outside. It was just her and Leonardo, trapped in a bubble of painful memories. But they weren't alone. Gabriel, intrigued by the tension in the air, looked from Amanda to Leonardo and then back to his mother. "Who is he?" Gabriel asked, frowning. Amanda hesitated. She took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. But before she could say anything, Leonardo stepped forward. "Gabriel!" He seemed to struggle to speak, his voice almost breaking. "My name is Leonardo Martins." Gabriel blinked, confused. "Yeah. E?" Amanda saw the confusion on her son's face turn into something more intense. He realized what was happening, as if a long-overlooked puzzle had suddenly been put together. "Mom, is he my father?" The silence that followed was devastating. Amanda didn't want Gabriel to find out this way. She knew that the moment would come one day, but she never expected it to be like this, so abrupt and out of her control. "Yes, Gabriel." Her voice was a whisper, full of pain. "He's your father." Gabriel took a step back as if he had been hit. His gaze on Amanda was a mixture of shock and betrayal. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Amanda tried to reach him, but Gabriel pulled away, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I needed to protect you," he explained, his voice shaking. "He abandoned us, Gabriel. I didn't want you to grow up with this pain." Leonardo took another step forward, but Gabriel held up his hand, asking him to stop. "No." The boy's voice was firm, but full of emotion. "I don't want to hear anything from you." "Gabriel, Leonardo began, but his son interrupted him. "No!" shouted Gabriel, his eyes shining with anger and tears. "You have no right to show up like this after 15 years. I don't need you." Before Amanda could stop him, Gabriel rushed out, through the door of the cafe, and disappeared into the rain. Amanda stood there, paralyzed, the coffee in her hands now cold. Leonardo, for his part, looked distraught. He looked at Amanda, trying to find words to justify his presence or what had happened so many years ago. "Please, Amanda," he began, but she interrupted him. "No, you don't have the right to ask for anything." The anger overflowed in her voice, mixed with a pain that she tried to hide. "You rejected him, Leonardo. You rejected me. And now what do you want? Pretend you can just show up and be part of his life?" Leo shook his head, looking lost. "I didn't know he was—" "You didn't?" Amanda laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you left me in that office alone and pregnant, and now it's too late." Leonardo remained silent, absorbing each word like a blow. He knew Amanda was right. But something inside him, perhaps the sight of Gabriel so like himself or the regret that had haunted him for years, made him believe that he had to try, even if it was impossible. "Amanda, I made a mistake." His voice faltered, laden with sincerity. "I know I was wrong, but now that I know about Gabriel, I have to try." Amanda stared at him, her eyes full of tears, but not of weakness. They were the tears of a woman who had overcome the impossible and who was unwilling to allow Leonardo to destroy what she had built. "I won't stop you from trying, Leo, but know that Gabriel is not a helpless child. He's an incredible young man, and if he decides that you have no place in his life, I will support him." With those words, Amanda left, leaving Leonardo alone in the cafeteria. He stood there, paralyzed, while the rain continued to fall outside. The weight of his choices, and their consequences, had finally hit him full force. Outside, Amanda found Gabriel sitting on a bench, soaking wet from the rain, his face buried in his hands. "Gabriel," she began, sitting down next to him. "I just want to understand, Mom." Her voice was bitter. "Why did he leave? Why didn't you ever tell me?" Amanda held his face, forcing him to look at her. "Because he didn't deserve you, Gabriel. But I couldn't let his absence define who you would be." Gabriel didn't answer. He just leaned his head on her shoulder, while Amanda hugged him tightly, trying to protect him from a pain she knew she could never truly erase. Amanda and Gabriel sat in silence in the rain, hugging each other on the bench in the square. The cold was beginning to intensify, but neither of them seemed to notice. Gabriel kept his head resting on his mother's shoulder, just as he used to when he was a child, and sought solace in nights of nightmares. But now what tormented him wasn't an imaginary shadow or a fictional monster. It was real. It was Leonardo Martins. After a few minutes, Gabriel finally broke the silence. He sounded sorry. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if he was fighting the emotions that threatened to overflow. Amanda clasped her son in her arms, wishing she could erase the pain he felt. "Regret doesn't change what he did, my love." Her voice was firm, but there was an undertone of sadness there. "He made a decision 15 years ago. He chose to abandon us." Gabriel pulled away slightly, looking at his mother with watery eyes. But what if he really has changed? What if he wants to try now? He hesitated, swallowing. Should I at least give it a chance? The question took Amanda by surprise. She had prepared her heart to protect Gabriel from Leonardo, to be the shield that would prevent any future pain caused by that man. But now, seeing the confusion in her son's eyes, she realized that she couldn't decide for him. "That decision is yours, Gabriel." Amanda held his face between her hands, forcing him to face her. "I'm not going to lie to you. The road back isn't easy, and he might disappoint you again. But if you feel you need to hear what he has to say, I'll be here, with you, every step of the way." Gabriel nodded, but said no more. They stood there for a few more minutes while the rain continued to fall, until they decided to go home. Over the next few days, Gabriel seemed lost in thought. He went to school, practiced basketball as usual, but something in his attitude had changed. The outgoing, confident boy now spent long periods locked in his room, staring at the ceiling or listening to music in silence. Amanda tried to respect his space, but her concern grew every day. She knew that Gabriel was struggling with conflicting feelings, anger, curiosity, and perhaps even hope. What scared her most was the possibility that he would get close to Leonardo and end up getting hurt. One afternoon, while Gabriel was at training, Amanda heard a knock on the door. When she opened it, she found Leonardo standing there looking tired and anxious. "I had to come, Amanda. We need to talk." She crossed her arms and kept her posture rigid. "What do you want, Leonardo? Don't you think you've done enough? Please." He took a step forward but stopped when he saw the hard look on her face. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I need to understand. I need to know what he's like." Amanda narrowed her eyes, feeling the anger growing inside her. "Do you want to understand who Gabriel is? He's an incredible boy, full of dreams, who grew up without the support of a father because you thought he was a mistake. He's the best thing that ever happened in my life, Leonardo, and you rejected him before you even met him." Leonardo lowered his head, defeated by her words. "I know I was a coward. I know I failed you both." He looked up, his eyes shining with tears. "But it haunts me every day, Amanda. Every decision I've made since that day has been marked by regret. When I saw Gabriel in that cafe, it was as if everything I'd hidden from myself came to the surface." Amanda felt her heart squeeze but kept her tone cool. "And what do you expect me to do, Leonardo? Pretend that nothing happened? That you can walk into his life now as if the last 15 years didn't matter?" "No." His voice broke, and he took a deep breath before continuing. "I know I can't erase the past. I just want a chance to be the father he deserves, even if it's too late." Amanda looked at him, trying to find some lie or manipulation in what he was saying. But all she saw was sincerity. A broken man trying to put the pieces of his life back together. She sighed, exhausted. "It's not up to me, Leo. If Gabriel wants to give you a chance, I won't stop him. But I want to make one thing clear. If you hurt him, if you cause him any kind of pain, I swear it will be the last time you cross his path." Leonardo nodded, grateful for the small opening she had given him. That evening, Amanda talked to Gabriel about Leonardo's visit. She told her son that his father was sorry and wanted to meet him, but made it clear that it was his decision. Gabriel was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "I want to hear what he has to say." Amanda felt a lump in her throat, but just nodded. "All right then, let's make an appointment." 2 days later, they met in a park near the River Douro. Amanda stood at a distance, sitting on a bench while Gabriel and Leonardo talked. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see their body language. Leonardo gesticulated, trying to explain something with an anguished expression. Gabriel, initially rigid, began to relax, although his expression was still full of suspicion. After almost an hour, they both got up and walked together to Amanda. Gabriel seemed calm, but there was something in his eyes that she couldn't decipher. "I'm going to give him a chance, Mom. Just one." Amanda looked at her son, and then at Leonardo. The man seemed thrilled, but also aware that the road would be long and difficult. "I won't let you down, Gabriel," he said, his voice firm. Gabriel just nodded but didn't reply. Over the next few weeks, Leonardo began to show up at Gabriel's basketball games. He stayed at the back of the stands, discreet but present. Gabriel pretended not to notice, but Amanda noticed that he glanced at his father from time to time. One day, after an important victory, Leonardo approached him to congratulate him. Gabriel accepted the gesture but didn't show much enthusiasm. "You play very well," said Leonardo. "You have talent." Gabriel shrugged. "My mother says that all the time." Leonardo smiled, even though he felt the weight of the words. He knew he was being tested and accepted it as part of the process. Amanda watched from afar, torn between hope and fear. Hope that Gabriel could find something positive in this relationship. Fear that everything would fall apart again. The days turned into weeks, and the relationship between Gabriel and Leonardo began to take small but significant steps. However, there was constant tension, like a silent storm brewing. Gabriel was willing to listen but not to forgive. He kept Leonardo at a safe distance, allowing his father to be present, but without giving him any kind of intimacy or trust. Amanda watched everything with a tight heart. Every interaction between the two was a delicate dance between curiosity and hurt. Gabriel, although reluctant, seemed fascinated by Leonardo, while his father tried hard to show that he was there, that he wanted to be part of his son's life. Even so, Amanda knew that Gabriel harbored difficult questions that he might not yet have the courage to verbalize. That Saturday afternoon, Amanda was at home, folding clothes in the living room, when Gabriel came in, throwing his backpack on the floor with a heavy sigh. She noticed the look of frustration on his face and decided not to ask him anything straight away. He needed some space. Gabriel sat down on the sofa next to her, crossing his arms. After a few minutes of silence, he finally spoke. "He tries to be nice, Mom, but it's not real." Amanda stopped what she was doing and looked at her son. "What do you mean, my love?" Gabriel shook his head, struggling to find the right words. "It's as if he's trying too hard, as if he wants to make up for everything he's lost, but it only makes me angrier." Amanda took a deep breath. She understood what Gabriel was feeling. It was impossible to make up for lost time. There was no gesture or word that could erase 15 years of absence. "Gabriel, sometimes people try so hard to fix something that they end up making even more mistakes." She put her hand on his shoulder, looking him in the eye. "Maybe that's what he's doing." "And what do I do with this anger, Mom?" Gabriel asked, his voice breaking. "Every time I look at him, all I can think about is the fact that he wasn't here, that he chose not to be here." Amanda pulled her son into a tight hug. "You don't have to pretend that everything is fine, Gabriel. He needs to know how you feel." Gabriel nodded but said no more. That same day, Leonardo showed up to pick Gabriel up and take him to a soccer match. Amanda watched from the window as her son got into the car, his posture rigid, his face serious. Leonardo tried to start a conversation, but Gabriel just stared out of the window, giving short, monosyllabic answers. The tension finally erupted in the stadium during half-time. Leonardo, trying to break the silence, started talking about his own adolescence. "When I was your age, I played soccer with my friends after school. It was the only thing I knew how to do well. My mother said I should concentrate more on my studies, but—" Gabriel interrupted him abruptly. "Do you really think I care what you did when you were a teenager?" Leonardo blinked, surprised by his son's aggression. "Gabriel, I was just trying to—" "Trying to what? Pretend we have something in common?" Gabriel turned to him, his face red with anger. "You think you can just show up in my life, talk about your past, and pretend to be my father?" Leonardo swallowed. He knew this moment would come, but he wasn't prepared for the intensity of his son's words. "I'm not trying to pretend anything," he replied, his voice low. "I just want you to get to know me." Gabriel laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Get to know you? All I know about you is that you abandoned my mother, that you left me, and now you want me to give you a chance." Leonardo felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that it wasn't that simple, but he knew that any justification would sound empty. I know I made a mistake, Gabriel. His voice almost failed him, but he continued, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm here now, and I'm going to stay here even if you hate me. Gabriel remained silent, Leonardo's words echoing in his mind. He didn't reply. He just looked away, returning his attention to the field in front of him. That evening, when Gabriel returned home, Amanda noticed that something was different. He looked exhausted, as if he had been fighting an internal hurricane. "How was the game?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Gabriel just shrugged and went to his room. Amanda knew he needed time to process what he was feeling. Meanwhile, Leonardo, sitting in his car in front of his house, felt the weight of the day on him. Gabriel's words reverberated in his mind, each one cutting like a blade. He knew that winning his son's trust would be difficult, but at that moment the task seemed impossible. Over the next few days, Gabriel maintained the same distant attitude, but Amanda noticed that something was changing. He no longer avoided talking about Leonardo, although he still did so with a tone of irritation and hurt. One day, while Amanda was preparing dinner, Gabriel came into the kitchen and sat down at the counter. "Do you think he's really changed?" he asked, looking at his hands. Amanda sighed, thinking of the best way to answer. "I think people can change, Gabriel, but that doesn't mean they stop carrying the mistakes of the past." "So why is he trying so hard?" Gabriel looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, perhaps because he realized that he had lost something very important. Amanda smiled softly. "And maybe because deep down he knows that you're the best part of him." Gabriel didn't answer, but those words seemed to have an impact. He spent the rest of the night in silence, reflecting. A few days later, Gabriel took the initiative to call Leonardo for a chat. They met in a cafe near the boys' school, a discreet place where they could talk without distractions. "If you really want to be part of my life, you're going to have to stop trying to please me all the time," said Gabriel directly. Leonardo nodded, surprised and relieved at the same time. "I just want to be honest with you, Gabriel, and I want to do it in a way that makes you feel comfortable." Gabriel crossed his arms, leaning back in his chair. "So, let's start with something simple. Why did you leave us?" The question hung in the air like a blade about to fall. Leonardo knew that there was no answer that could justify his absence, but he also knew that he owed his son the truth. "Because I was a coward," he replied, his voice laden with regret. "When your mother told me about you, I was afraid of how it would change my life, afraid of losing control of everything I had. And instead of doing the right thing, I chose the easy thing." Gabriel remained silent, absorbing those words. It wasn't the answer he wanted to hear, but somehow it rang true. "At least you admitted it," he murmured at last. Leonardo looked at his son with a mixture of hope and sadness. "I know I can't go back, Gabriel, but if you leave me, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the father you deserve." Gabriel didn't answer immediately. He looked at his father, trying to decide whether he was worth believing. "I still don't trust you," he said after a long silence, "but I'll give you a chance." Leonardo felt tears burning his eyes, but he held them back. "That's all I can ask." From that moment on, something began to change between them. The path was still uncertain, full of doubts and unresolved hurts, but now there was a chance, a tiny spark of hope, that perhaps time could rebuild what had been broken. The months that followed were marked by timid and uncertain steps in building a relationship between Gabriel and Leonardo. Interactions began to become more frequent, but they still carried a silent weight. Each conversation seemed like an attempt to cross an abyss, and even when they found common ground, the past remained like a shadow between them. Gabriel, for his part, was going through an emotional storm. He didn't want to admit it, but a part of him longed for his father's presence. However, that same part was drowned out by pain and resentment. Amanda watched everything from a distance, her heart divided between worry and the hope that her son would find some form of peace. One Saturday morning, Leonardo decided to do something that required courage. He showed up at Gabriel's basketball practice, not just as a silent spectator, but as someone willing to get involved. With a basketball under his arm, he approached his son after practice, when the court was almost empty. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, holding the ball like a shield. Gabriel looked at him, hesitating. "What do you want now?" he answered, with a mixture of tiredness and suspicion. Leonardo took a deep breath. "I know I'm not the person you'd like to be here. I know it's too late to be the father you needed when you were younger, but I thought maybe we could play together." Gabriel arched an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Do you play basketball?" Leonardo gave a small smile, the first one Gabriel had seen that seemed genuine. "Let's just say I'm not very good, but I can learn." Gabriel stood still for a moment, trying to decide whether it was worth accepting the invitation. Finally, he took the ball from Leonardo's hands and walked to the center of the court. "If you're going to learn, you'll start by losing," said Gabriel, pointing to the hoop. Leonardo laughed softly, relieved at this small step forward. Fair enough. They spent almost an hour on the court. Gabriel mastered the game with ease, while Leonardo, clearly rusty, did his best to keep up. There were moments of silence, but also occasional laughter, especially when Leonardo made a disastrous mistake. "You're terrible at that, you know that?" Gabriel teased after Leonardo threw the ball and missed the hoop completely. "I prefer to think I'm learning," replied Leonardo, panting as he reached for the ball. Gabriel laughed, something he hadn't done in his father's presence for months. It was a short sound, but it carried something Leonardo hadn't heard since he'd met his son: lightness. When they had finished, they both sat down on the bleachers, sweaty and tired. Leonardo looked at Gabriel, who was fiddling with his shoelaces, avoiding eye contact. "You play very well," said Leonardo, breaking the silence. Gabriel shrugged. "It's what I like to do." Leonardo nodded. "And what else do you like?" he asked, genuinely curious. Gabriel finally looked up. "Why do you want to know?" Leonardo hesitated for a moment, but decided to be honest. "Because I missed 15 years of your life, Gabriel, and now that I'm here, I want to know every part of it, if you'll let me." Gabriel didn't answer immediately. He looked at his father, trying to decipher the sincerity in his words. There was something different in Leonardo's voice, something he couldn't ignore. "Let's see if you deserve it," Gabriel replied, getting up and walking over to pick up his backpack. Leonardo smiled slightly. It was little, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Leonardo continued to show up at Gabriel's training sessions and matches. He no longer limited himself to being a spectator. He now looked for opportunities to connect with his son, whether it was taking him on a ride home or simply listening to his stories about school and his friends. Gabriel, for his part, began to let his guard down, although he still maintained an emotional distance. Amanda watched this transformation with caution. Although she knew that Gabriel was becoming more receptive, she also feared that he was allowing Leonardo to approach him without being fully prepared to deal with the consequences. "Do you think he's really changing?" Amanda asked one evening while talking to Camilla on the phone. "I don't know, cousin. Men like Leonardo are complicated. But if Gabriel is giving him a chance, maybe he deserves it." Camilla paused. "What matters is that you're prepared for whatever happens." Amanda sighed, feeling the weight of her cousin's words. She knew that Gabriel's heart was at stake, and any mistake could break it in a way that not even she could repair. One afternoon, Leonardo showed up unexpectedly at Amanda's house. She welcomed him with the same resistance as usual, but something in his countenance made her hesitate. He looked more vulnerable than ever. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice low. Amanda made room in the doorway, albeit reluctantly. "What do you want now, Leonardo?" He sat down on the sofa, running his hand through his hair, as if trying to organize his thoughts. "I want to know if I'm doing the right thing," he said at last. Amanda stared at him in surprise. "You expect me to give you a manual on how to be a father?" Leonardo laughed bitterly. "No, of course not. But you know Gabriel better than anyone. I just want to make sure I'm not forcing something on him that he doesn't want." Amanda crossed her arms, thinking of the best way to respond. "Gabriel is stubborn, but he's also very fair. If he's allowing you to get close, it's because deep down he wants to get to know you, but that doesn't mean he's forgiven you." Leonardo nodded, absorbing every word. "So there's still hope." Amanda sighed, feeling a mixture of compassion and exhaustion. "That depends on you, Leonardo. It depends on how you deal with the difficult times, because they will come and Gabriel will test your limits." Leonardo thanked her and left shortly afterwards, leaving Amanda with a strange feeling. For the first time, she felt that Leonardo was really trying to change, but the biggest test came weeks later, when Gabriel found an old photo of Amanda pregnant. The picture, forgotten in a drawer, showed Amanda standing in front of a mirror, holding her belly with a look full of fear and hope. Gabriel brought the photo to his mother, holding it as if it were proof of something he had never known. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice low. Amanda felt her heart squeeze. "It was just after I left Lisbon," she replied. "I was trying to accept that it would be just you and me against the world." Gabriel looked at the photo for a long moment before speaking. "He didn't even know you were like this, did he?" he asked, without looking at his mother. Amanda didn't answer immediately. "He knew, Gabriel. He just chose not to be here." The words fell like a weight on Gabriel, but something changed in his expression. He looked at Amanda with a determination she hadn't seen since all this had started. "Then he'll have to deal with it," said Gabriel, before walking out the door. Amanda stood still holding the photo, as silent tears streamed down her face. Gabriel walked quickly down the street, holding his mother's old photo in his hands. The icy wind was blowing hard, but he hardly noticed. His mind was in a whirl. The image of Amanda pregnant seemed to have driven something into his chest that he didn't know how to deal with. He had always known that his mother was strong, but seeing that record capturing a moment when she was alone, waiting for him while facing the whole world, aroused an anger in him that he couldn't control. Anger at Leonardo. Gabriel knew that his father was trying to redeem himself. He could see it in the small gestures, the messages he sent to ask about training, the conversations about his interests, even the invitations to do things together. But at the same time, the deep hurt of 15 years of absence still weighed too heavily, and now, with that photo, everything seemed even harder to forgive. When he reached the park near the school, where he usually went to think, he sat down on a secluded bench. He ran his fingers over the photo, as if trying to find answers in it. Then he heard a voice behind him. "I was looking for you." Gabriel turned and saw Leonardo standing a few meters away, his hands in his coat pockets. He looked tired, as if he had aged a decade in the last few months. "How did you know I was here?" asked Gabriel, without hiding his irritation. "Your mother told me that you usually come here when you want to be alone." Leonardo hesitated before continuing. "But if you prefer, I can leave." Gabriel shook his head, sighing. "Whatever." Leonardo approached slowly, as if he were treading on thin ice. He sat down on the bench next to his son, keeping a respectful distance. The silence between them was heavy, full of unspoken things. "What's that?" Leonardo asked, pointing to the photo in Gabriel's hands. Gabriel looked at the picture again before answering. "It's my mother, pregnant with me. Alone." Leonardo felt a tightness in his chest. He could imagine Amanda at that moment, facing everything with no one by her side. The guilt he carried, which was already enormous, seemed to double in weight. "I didn't know she kept that," said Leonardo, his voice almost a whisper. Gabriel finally turned to him, his eyes full of tears that he was trying to hold back. "Have you ever thought about what she went through? What I've been through?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Do you think it's easy to grow up seeing everyone with a father while I had to make excuses?" Leonardo lowered his head, unable to look at his son. "No, Gabriel, it's not easy. And I'll never be able to forgive myself for not being there." "But you chose this," shouted Gabriel, standing up abruptly. "You chose to abandon me as if I were nothing." Leonardo stood up too, his heart racing. "You're right," he replied, his voice rising for the first time. "I chose wrong, Gabriel. I was a coward, and every day since, I've lived with the regret of that choice." Gabriel remained silent, his father's words echoing in the empty space between them. "It's not that simple," Gabriel said at last, his voice lower. "Do you think you can just say you're sorry and everything will be fine? That's not how it works." Leonardo took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to fall. "I know it doesn't work like that, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope that one day you'll be able to understand that I'm trying." Gabriel looked at his father for a long moment, trying to decipher the sincerity in his words. He wanted to hate him. He wanted to shout that he would never be enough. But deep down there was something that made him hesitate. A small part of him wanted to believe that Leonardo really was willing to change. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Gabriel finally said, his voice full of emotion. Leonardo took a step forward but kept his distance. "You don't have to forgive me, Gabriel. Just let me try." Gabriel looked away, quickly wiping away the tears streaming down his face. He didn't want to give his father the satisfaction of seeing him cry. "Let's see what happens," he muttered, before turning and starting to walk home. Leonardo stood still, watching his son walk away. Although Gabriel's words were harsh, there was something in them that gave him hope. A faint thread, but enough to make him believe that there was still a way forward. Over the next few days, Leonardo continued to make himself present in Gabriel's life, but now with more care. He realized that Gabriel needed space, so he avoided pressuring him. Instead, he tried to build a relationship based on small gestures, sending messages to wish him good luck before matches, bringing him snacks after training, and occasionally asking him about simple things, such as his school subjects or his friends. Gabriel, although still distant, began to respond, first with short answers, then with complete sentences, and eventually with questions of his own. It was slow progress, but undeniable. Meanwhile, Amanda watched with a mixture of relief and concern. She could see that Gabriel was beginning to allow Leonardo into his life, but she also knew that her son still carried a lot of doubts and insecurities. "Do you think he's ready for this?" Amanda asked Camilla during a phone call. "Maybe he's not," replied her cousin. "But he has the right to try, and you have to trust that he's strong enough to handle it, Amanda." Amanda sighed. She knew Camilla was right, but the instinct to protect Gabriel still spoke louder. One afternoon, while Gabriel was at home studying, Leonardo showed up with a surprise: tickets to a professional basketball game. Gabriel, who loved the sport, couldn't hide his interest but tried to disguise it. "You don't have to buy me nice things, you know," he said, crossing his arms. Leonardo smiled. "I'm not trying to buy you, Gabriel. I just thought it would be nice to do something together that you like." Gabriel looked at the tickets for a moment before sighing. "That's fine, but if you start talking too much during the game, I'll pretend I don't know you." Leonardo laughed, relieved to see his son relax a little. On the day of the match, the two sat side by side in the stands. Gabriel was clearly excited, although he tried not to show it. During the game, Leonardo asked questions about the plays and the players, showing genuine interest in what his son liked. Gabriel eventually got carried away and began to enthusiastically explain the rules and strategies of the game. For a few hours, they forgot about the past and just enjoyed the moment. On the way home, Gabriel looked at his father and, for the first time, really smiled. "It was fun, thank you." Leonardo felt his heart warm. "It was fun because I was with you." Gabriel didn't reply, but the smile remained. For the first time, he felt that maybe, just maybe, it was possible to build something with Leonardo. There was still a long way to go, but that night, as they walked side by side, Gabriel felt that he wasn't alone. The weeks passed like a breath, and little by little, something Amanda had never imagined began to happen. Gabriel and Leonardo were building a relationship. It wasn't perfect, far from it. There were silences, hesitations and hurts that arose without warning, but there were also moments of genuine connection, little glimmers of hope that seemed to promise that the past didn't have to define the future. For Amanda, it was like watching a mountain being climbed. Slow, difficult, but possible. She didn't interfere, just watched from a distance, hoping that Leonardo wouldn't make another mistake and that Gabriel wouldn't get hurt more than he already had. Then came Gabriel's 16th birthday. Amanda always made a point of celebrating the day with something special, even when the budget was tight. That year, Gabriel seemed less enthusiastic than usual. He insisted that he didn't need anything, just a simple dinner at home with his mother and Camilla. But Leonardo had other plans. Without telling Gabriel, he asked Amanda for permission to organize something special. Amanda hesitated, afraid that a grandiose attempt would bring more trouble than joy, but seeing the sincerity in Leonardo's eyes, she gave in. On the night of the anniversary, Gabriel arrived home from training, tired and sweaty, expecting to find a quiet dinner on the table. When he opened the door, however, he was greeted by an explosion of voices. "Surprise!" The living room was decorated with balloons and streamers. Camilla was there, smiling with a party hat on her head, along with some of Gabriel's closest friends and even colleagues from the basketball team. In the middle of it all, Leonardo was standing by, holding a cake decorated with the theme of Gabriel's favorite team. Gabriel stood there, surprised, not knowing what to say. "What's that?" he asked, looking at Amanda, who was standing next to him with a hesitant smile. "It's your birthday, darling," she said. "And it was your father's idea." Gabriel looked at Leonardo, who seemed a little nervous, as if he was waiting for the verdict of a trial. "You did this?" Gabriel asked, incredulous. Leonardo shrugged, trying to disguise his nervousness. I thought you deserved something special. For a moment, Gabriel said nothing. Then slowly a smile began to form on his face. Okay, but only because there's cake. The room erupted in laughter and a relaxed atmosphere took over. Gabriel seemed relaxed, chatting to his friends and laughing at Camilla's jokes, while Amanda and Leonardo watched from afar. Thank you for that, said Amanda softly, while they were in the kitchen getting more drinks. No need to thank me. He deserves more than I could ever give him. Amanda looked at Leonardo, noticing how different he looked. The man she had known years ago was proud, cold, and driven by selfishness. But now there was something more human about him, something she had never expected to see. You've changed, she said, almost as a thought aloud. Leonardo smiled sadly. I had to change, and yet I know I'll never make up for everything I've done. Amanda didn't reply, but something in her expression softened. She still bore the scars of the past, but maybe, just maybe, it was possible to believe that Leonardo was trying to be a better person. The party went on until late, and when the friends left, only Amanda, Gabriel, Camilla, and Leonardo remained. Gabriel was sitting on the living room floor, opening the presents he had received. When he reached the last one, a simple envelope that Leonardo had given him earlier in the evening, he stopped. Is this yours too? Gabriel asked, holding the envelope curiously. Leonardo nodded, a little tense. Open it and see. Gabriel opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small key ring with a basketball on it. He read the letter in silence, his eyes skimming over the words. Gabriel, I know that words aren't enough to fix what I did or to heal what you felt because of me, but I want you to know that every day I spent without you was a day I lived with regret. You're not a mistake. You never were. You're the best part of me, even if I didn't realize it until too late. This keyring is simple, but I want you to have it as a symbol of what I'm trying to build with you. I can't promise that I'll be perfect, but I can promise that I'll never give up on being the father you deserve. Love, Leonardo. Gabriel finished reading and looked at his father, saying nothing. The silence was almost palpable. That's kind of cheesy, you know, said Gabriel, finally holding up the keyring. Everyone laughed, but there was something else in Gabriel's smile. A silent acceptance, a recognition that despite everything, perhaps he was willing to try. Later, when everyone was getting ready to leave, Gabriel called out to Leonardo on the balcony. Hey, thanks for today. It was nice. Leonardo smiled, relieved. You deserve a lot more than that, Gabriel. Gabriel hesitated, as if gathering the courage to say something. Maybe we can do this more often. You know, spend some time together. Leonardo felt his heart race. I'd love that. Gabriel nodded, and for the first time Leonardo felt that there was a future for both of them. On the way home, Amanda looked at Gabriel through the rearview mirror. He was holding the keyring in his hand, looking at her with a small smile. It was a good birthday, Mum. Amanda smiled. I'm glad you liked it, my love. And for the first time in a long time, Amanda felt that the weight she was carrying had lifted. Not completely, but enough for her to see a lighter future, not just for Gabriel, but for herself. At that moment, as night fell over Porto, Amanda, Gabriel, and Leonardo took the first step towards something that had previously seemed impossible, building a family marked by flaws but also by a love that was finally finding its place. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story and got involved with the characters, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more impactful stories, and leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. And before you leave, check out the next video that's popping up on your screen. It's another plot full of emotion that I'm sure you'll love. Thanks for watching and see you next time.